Hello folks and welcome. Linux Mint 21.1 Cinnamon. So this video will be more than 2 minutes. All my videos are more than 2 minutes, but all my videos have timelines and chapters. But if you are wanting to learn some new mouse tricks and keyboard shortcuts, I would encourage that you watch the video in its entirety. I know it's going to be long, but I'm also going to talk about quite a few things today. This is Linux Mint 21.1 Cinnamon desktop. I'm going to use Alt F4. So I am Icelandic, and I've had some folks make mention that I, describe things quite differently than what they're used to. Okay? Now, YouTube is worldwide, so some folks may understand me better than others, and maybe some folks not so much. So I'm going to be talking about all of these little tips that I threw in here. I just made up a document, but I'm going to be showing quite a few tips and tricks today. So welcome, folks. The first thing I'm going to make mention is I am going to be showing you the English keyboard. Again, I'm Icelandic, but the keyboard that I'm mentioning is a standard keyboard layout. I'm going to be talking about the control key, the super key. Some people call it a start key, and some people have a symbol of a window on it, and the Alt key for the most part, and combinations of. I'm also going to talk about some mouse actions. I have Piper installed. You may not know what that is. Piper is a gaming configuration type of, or mouse configuration. That's what my current mouse looks like. And here's the button configuration. I'm going to be talking about this middle button and also the scroll wheel that is in the center, highlighted in blue, for the most part today. All right, I have used words like depress and hold the control key. What I mean by that is push down on your control key, and then like using the scroll wheel is to scroll this forward or backwards, that blue button right there. I'm also going to talk about, if I remember, this little switch that's underneath that scroll wheel. Some of you folks have these and I'm not even aware that you have those things. Even my cheap mouse has one of those, believe it or not. I have also a very inexpensive Logitech mouse that also has the same switch underneath. But in either case, I'm going to mostly talk about that scroll wheel. But that's what my mouse currently looks like. So welcome, folks. So let me open up this document that I created, and let's start from scratch. So a couple of little tips for resizing windows is instead of using that thing next to the close button, I usually double click on these lines. You can use it the old-fashioned way. I will try to enlarge the text. This is a LibreOffice Writer, by the way. I will enlarge the text using the exact same thing I'm doing right here. I'm pressing and holding the control key, CTRL, control key. Get rid of that, by the way. I'm just going to hit ignore. Control key. That's what that stands for, CTRL. And then I use the mouse scroll wheel. Computer mouse scroll wheel to resize icons and text, not only in Firefox, but also in LibreOffice Writer. I'm holding down the control key right now. I'm pressing and holding down the control key. I have used words like depressing and holding in the past, and people seem to not understand that word. That's okay. It's just the way I talk. No big deal. You'll also probably find some misspelled words in here. I'm not after spelling contests, okay? I'm just after information. So hopefully you'll appreciate this. So again, all I'm doing is holding down the control key while using my computer mouse scroll wheel to resize text. I'm not changing the font. I'm resizing the text on the fly so you can see it better. I will open up Firefox, the web browser, and do the exact same thing. Okay, I'll make this larger for you. I'm using the exact same action. Okay, I'll use the conventional X. I could have also used Alt F4. Now I'm going to open up the file manager, Nemo, and I'm going to do the exact same thing. It's simulating doing that right here. All right, so far so good? All right. Holding down the control key, press and hold the control key, then use your mouse scroll wheel to resize icons in a file manager, resize text in Firefox web browser or whatever other web browser, and also LibreOffice Writer, for instance. Now I'm going to continue. Alt and F1. Let me minimize this. I'm going to depress or push down and hold the Alt key and pressing F1. I have workspaces. I have 4 of them. Workspace 1, 2, 3, and 4. You can also add more. I'm going to use the Escape key to get out. So that was Alt and F1. Holding down the Alt key, pressing F1. The second one is Alt and F2. Alt and F2 makes everything dark, and you have an enter box. Enter a command, it says, or escape to close. Escape key, in other words. I'm gonna press the small r, not depress the small r. I'm not gonna use that word. I'm trying not to use that word. I don't mean to use that word, but pressing the small r, and then hit enter, and it will restart Cinnamon. I will move my mouse pointer over here, the mouse cursor, mouse pointer, different words. It will jump toward the center and say in restart Cinnamon when I hit the enter key. Watch this. Hopefully you saw that. It says restarting Cinnamon. Now I did not edit this video, by the way. I can film while restarting Cinnamon. It won't do anything to my filming at all. What's another way to restart Cinnamon? Well, I could right click on this imaginary panel bar of mine because it's see-through, because I'm using an extension that makes it see-through. If you're curious, I'm using the transparent panels. But more importantly, I'm going to right click and hit troubleshoot, restart Cinnamon. Now you can see the word restarting Cinnamon right there on your screen. It was probably pretty quick. Now I'm going to use another command called Control Alt and Escape, and it is also restarting Cinnamon. Different ways of restarting Cinnamon. I just restarted it 3 times while filming. All right, Alt and F2 is a run dialog box. Alt and F4 you're going to hear me mention quite often. And you probably have seen a lot of my videos where I mention that quite often, Alt F4. I'm not going to close that box. I'm going to use Alt F4 on the system settings though. Instead of aiming for that close button, I'm going to use Alt and F4. Alt and F4. I'm going to open up a web browser. It doesn't matter if it's maximized or minimized. Alt and F4 to close. Okay, that's the Alt and F4 button. The unmaximized window may not be useful for a lot of people, but I'm going to use it anyways. So this is currently in a maximized state. So Alt and F5 just makes that box smaller. I'll make this larger and do that one more time. Alt and F5. Okay, now I'll maximize this up. Now the next one I'm going to show here, a lot of people have difficulties mastering. But I'm going to first bring it to this size, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this around. You see that little plus key that just lit up? All I'm doing is I'm clicking on the top line and holding my mouse button down to simulate moving this around. I'm going to do the exact same thing using the Alt and F7. Alt and F7. Do not click, just grab a hold of your mouse and move the window around. Do not click until you actually are satisfied where you want to place it, where you want to put it. So I'm going to put it right there and hit, and then I'm going to click. Now it goes back and it's out of that mode. So one more time, click and hold to move it around, or use Alt and F7. And then just move your mouse without clicking. And then click once you got it satisfied where you want it. The next one is Alt and Spacebar. Before I get these messages going, you misspelled something or whatever else, you may see some of that in this video, okay? All I'm trying to do is get information across on how to use different keyboard, mouse and keyboard and mouse functions, let's put it that way. So don't focus too much on the spelling part. Alt and the space bar, they're normally next to each other on your keyboard. Okay, all I'm going to be doing is depressing that key and this key together. And what does that do? Gives you that mini dialog window. Minimize, maximize, move, resize, close, and the rest of this stuff. Alt and F10, toggle max window state. That would be like clicking this, or doing my trick of double clicking on this thing. You can hear my mouse going click, click. Okay, Alt and F10. Alt and F10 does that. Alt and F10. Alt and F10. All right, the next one I am going to show you with Control, CTRL is Control something, and F1 in this case is keyboard shortcuts. I put a star in here. Minimize open windows or close them. So I'm going to minimize this and use Control F1 after I minimize. Pressing down my Control key, holding it down, and pressing F1. That's all I did was press down on the Control key and hold it, and F1 brings up shortcuts. There's 3 pages worth. The most common ones are on page 3, like Control X for cut, Control C for copy, Control V for paste, Control A for select all. There's no minimize here, there's just a close button. What's another way to close this window instead of hitting the right X? Alt and F4. All right, so you saw those keyboard shortcuts. Now I'm going to point to this edit menu in my LibreOffice Writer. Control X, Control C, Control V. Very common keys. There's select all also, Control A. All right, keyboard shortcuts, Control F1, Control and F1. Moving along to the next is Control Alt and Delete. So a lot of you folks coming from the Windows world, it does a different thing, but this is Mint. So it does a log out if you do Control Alt and Delete under normal default conditions, unless you altered them. Control Alt and Delete. Because there is a way you can alter stuff in keyboard shortcuts under settings. I'm going to have to hit cancel before that thing reaches 0. System settings. Keyboard shortcuts. If you alter stuff in here, some of the stuff that you're seeing here may be different. Okay? Just wanted to make mention of that to some of the folks that may have altered things. All right. The Control Alt and L, that's lock screen. L is in lock. The Control Alt and Escape is a restarting a Cinnamon. Also Alt and F2 small r restart Cinnamon, and also right clicking on your panel bar, troubleshoot, restart Cinnamon. So there are 3 ways of restarting Cinnamon. And again, I can be filming while restarting Cinnamon. I've done it many times. Done it on my previous videos. I'll do it right now. Control Alt and Escape. I just restarted Cinnamon. Right click, troubleshoot. I just restarted Cinnamon while talking. All right. Control Alt and End. You know, instead of clicking this down here. Control Alt and End. Control Alt and End. I have my timers may be different from yours. Don't focus too much on that. My user for today is Bob, if you're curious. I like to make up different names sometimes on videos. So Control Alt and End, shutdown system. Very common one for opening terminal is Control Alt and T, as in terminal. Some of you folks have seen me use that command many times if you are an old subscriber of my previous channel with those 450 videos. I probably have done this over 100 times on those videos. System information. System information. Alt F4. Alt F4 closes any window. Speaking of, there it is. Alt and F4. However, on some windows, it's also Control and Q. You may want to try that. There's also Control and W on some particular applications or programs. Alt F4, though, is very common. Now, some of you folks may not have this one. Let me make this larger for you, and I'll blow this up. So print SCR. Let me bring up the keyboard layout. Is this key right here. Print screen or system RQ. A lot of people have different names for them. Okay. So that's the key that I'm referring to, the print screen for screenshot. So on my keyboard has a key in between the control and the super key that has a function key on it. And on my keyboard, I need to press function and insert to make a screenshot. I'm going to do that for you right now. That's what mine does, to make a screenshot on the fly. You can also use the screenshot tool manually. And you can also place that on your panel or desktop or add it to your favorites also. All right, so screenshot. Super and E. All right, one more time with the keyboard layout. Super key. Again, my keyboard says start on it. Some folks won't have these keys. Some folks will have a key that looks like a window symbol. Some folks will have two of them. I only have one. I don't have this one. Okay, just to let you know. But in either case, I'm going to use Super and E. So on my keyboard is Start and E. Brings up the home folder for Bob. Bob is our made-up name user for today. Home folder, File Manager, Alt and F4. So speaking of file managers, let's take a look at some of these shortcuts. If you don't mind, I'm going to resize this slightly and I'm going to try to squeeze this in on where you can see all of this stuff. So this is Nemo, the file manager, and hopefully you're fairly familiar with your file manager, but you may not be familiar with all the shortcuts. Going back to my original thing that I wanted to resize icons, you can do it the old-fashioned way. Or you can hold down your control key. My previous verbiage used to be to press and hold the control key. Well, press down and hold the control key while using your computer mouse scroll wheel to resize icons. Or you can do it the old-fashioned way. So what I'm going to do is open up, double-click on Documents. And I am going to select the three folders or directories, as Linux calls them, and these files by hitting Control-A as an alpha right here. Control-A does that. Now you can copy them, paste them, cut, whatever. Okay. So the next command here is Control-N as in Nancy, new window. What does a new window do? A new window creates another one of these. Control-N. What is this good for? Well, if you downloaded a bunch of files, and I have a bunch of them here, and you need to move them from your download folder into, say, Documents, then you can just click and drag and drop them. That will cut and paste them into here. If you feel more comfortable, you can certainly do a right-click and cut or copy. But two windows, you can also do that. There's a third way of doing this with a single window, which is View, Extra Pane. Splits it down the middle. Then you can make this side your downloads and this side your documents. Downloads, documents. You can see the entry bar here. All your choice. I'll use the conventional close on that one. All right, the next one is Edit Bookmarks. So I'm going to reopen this, move it to the side, and I'm going to use the Control-B as in boy. Control-B, Edit Bookmarks. A lot of people don't use a lot of bookmarks in your file manager, Nemo, but there you have it. I'll use the conventional X. How about Control-C? Well, you have Control-C, which is copy. You'll also have Control-X and Control-V. Copy and paste, in other words. How about Control-F? Have you used that one? Well, Control-F does what? Find files or content. Are you searching for a keyword? Well, you may want to use that. Are you searching for a file? You may want to use that. This one here is very common, not only to this file manager, but to countless others. You may or may not be aware that I do videos for lots of Linux distros or distributions. And I use lots of different file managers when I do my videos for different distributions or distros. but Control H is very common in all of them. It shows hidden files and folders. Let me go to the home folder for Bob for a second and hit Control H. Now you see more stuff. I have dot icons. That's a hidden folder. I'm going to open that. That's the current mouse pointer or cursor. Radioactive is the name of this mouse cursor. Maybe you've seen some of my other videos on like candy icons or rainbow icons or whatever else. I have also many distributions that I've done this same kind of things to. Hidden files and folders. Okay, so that .bash history, that's a hidden file. And that is Born Again Shell history. The commands that I punched into terminal, for instance. Control H. Now you see it, now you don't. Control H. Toggle entry bar. What does that actually mean? Well, this is the entry bar here. Normally you would click that if you wanted to see this. All right, I'm going to open this up for a second. So Control L right here. Control L. I know this may look like an I, but that's an L. Okay, Control L. All I'm doing is holding down the Control key while hitting the L. It's toggling that back and forth for the entry. All right, there's also in here, it says Control Q. As I pointed out, sometimes Control Q and stuff like that does not close all windows, but Alt F4 does. Well, in this one, Control Q will close that window in your file manager, Nemo. I'll reopen that. One more time, Control Q for quit. Close window. I can also use Alt F4. Does the same job. All right, so that was Control Q. We keep scrolling. Last item in the file manager is Control S as in Sam. What does that do? Control S. It's a select items matching for pattern. I'll let you think about that one. Now, very popular keyboard commands for web browser, Firefox. Let's open up Firefox. So before I continue with showing you keyboard shortcuts, may I first make mention of some mouse tricks for you. All right, so again, I am using a gaming mouse, but you can certainly use this on your standard mice also. If you need to resize text on the fly, hold down your Control key on your keyboard. Hold down your Control key on your keyboard. And while holding that thing, you can use your scroll wheel to resize text from 30%, that's the minimum, to 500%, which is maximum, as of this current date of June 20th, 2023. Now I'm going to release the Control key. It's currently sitting at 180%. And I can scroll normally at 180 currently. Or should I say, go back to 100, like that. Let's go backwards, 180, go forwards. It's 100%. Scrolling up, that would be now 180, and also this is 180, because that's a different web page. Scrolling back to 100, this will disappear once I hit 100. That's 100%. Most people don't go below that, unless you got really good eyeballs. Anyways, some people will appreciate larger text. Some people may not so much. Now I'm going to continue. Let's talk about some keyboard shortcuts. Starting with Control B, toggle bookmarks. Control B as in boy. Now, why did it go bold in here? Because I'm currently working in this document. So I'm going to undo that by using Control Z. But I'm going to click in here now and go play in here. So Control B as in boy. That's bookmarks. That's in a web browser. That was LibreOffice Writer. That's where I made my mistake. But I fixed that rather quickly by using keyboard shortcuts. All right, Control B. Again, Firefox web browser for bookmarks. Adding a bookmark Well, we can all hit that little thing right here, right? Well, you can also use the keyboard equivalent, Control D. Control D as in dog. Okay? If you're not aware that you can shorten things up, you can certainly do that by clicking there and then erasing things. You can call this A if you like. I'm going to use that as an example. There's A right there. If you're trying to squeeze a whole bunch of these on the line, you may want to edit these things. What's LFS stands for? Linux for Seniors. My YouTube site. Okay. I'm going to restart this thing, just to let you see it. So I renamed that one A, and this is called Amazon. They all started with the same. They're both on the same page. They're both the same. 140%. That one's 140. I'll go back to 100 if you like. This is still at 180 if you recall. Drop this back to something reasonable, 120. And then I'm going to right click and do a delete bookmark. All right. How about if you want to look at history? Well, that would be Control H as in Henry. History. Close. Page history, a little bit different. Now, you may find this kind of weird, but I'm going to use that as my source and hit Control I. Okay. There is Amazon information. And close. Print dialog box. Control P as in Paul. This is very common, not only in a web browser, but also in here in LibreOffice Writer. But I'm going to use Control P in here anyways. Control P. All right, so may need to move this to the side for a second. So I can save that as a PDF or whatever printer I have currently assigned. In this case, I have a label printer, but I could just save it to a PDF. Save. If I do Control P in here in my LibreOffice Writer, I will just let you see that. It's Control P in here also. Slightly different box. I also should have the same, roughly the same choices, print to file or this label printer. Still a dialog box. So that's Control P for print dialog box. Also there's a Control Q. Control Q for quit. However, mine is set to confirm when using Control Q. If I use Alt F4, this will actually just close. But that's Control Q. I can unselect that also. I'm going to hit cancel. Alt F4. See, it doesn't ask for anything. I'll reopen the Firefox and move this to the side. All right. Is there a time you need to reload the page? I don't know what you're working with, but let's say you wanted to reload this page. Well, you can use Control R. Control R is a reload. It's the same thing as you pressing that button. You can actually see that in yellow. It says Control plus R. Control S is save. Control S. Save it to an HTML file. Where do you want to save it? You don't have to select download. You can save it into your documents or wherever. Save button. Give it a name. Leave the same name, whatever. Your choice if you want to save HTML files or web page files. That was Control S as in Sam. Let me continue. The next one is Control T, new tab. Very common. A lot of people just use the click, the plus. I'm going to do something that you probably are going, what did he just do? I'll show you that in a second. But I'm going to first use Control T and create 3 tabs. Control T, Control T. A couple of tabs. All right, so on this tab, I'm going to put LFS, Linux for Seniors. On that tab, I'll put Amazon. And that also says Amazon, but we're going to go one more back and we'll put Expedia on that one. So I got 3 tabs. Expedia, Amazon, and LFS. I'm going to close one of these tabs, but not using the X, I'm going to point to the center and press a key. You probably don't know what I'm doing right now. I used to show this on my previous channel of what I'm doing right now. I'm not pushing the X. Let me open up my mouse for a second. I'm going to use Piper for this. Again, that's just a configuration utility for this mouse. And so what I'm doing is I'm depressing this key right here, the middle mouse button that is sitting underneath my scroll wheel. You will find this also on many computer mice, and you probably have no idea that it's there. There's a switch or a button underneath your scroll wheel on a lot of your computer mice that will allow you middle mouse button actions. And that is how I'm closing these little tabs. Instead of using the X, I'm just depressing my scroll wheel down to perform these actions. Push down, push down, push down. Of course, if I close the last one, it closes the web browser. Probably not desirable, but more importantly, thought I'd show that. So, Control-T creates these. And you can certainly do it the old-fashioned way. Close this here. You don't have to use my little mouse trick. And the last one is Control-W. Control-W closes that window. That's Firefox. And how do I close this? Alt and F4, and I'll say thank you for watching.